Good evening. I'd like to welcome all of you to the City Council regular meeting of Tuesday, December 5th. First on the agenda, call the meeting to order and approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Before we start the meeting, I would just like to give a little thanks to our city staff and our fire department and anybody that helped around Cannon Beach today. I think there was a challenging day. We were all definitely stuck in town. And so thank you and hopefully the rain will stop. So first on the agenda, we have public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment that does not have to do with our public hearing?
Looks like we have a hand up from the chamber,
Okay,
and then you have a couple in the audience too. Want to do the chamber first?
yes, please.
Yeah.
So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out that I'm trying to put the YouTube video on in the hall for everybody, and it's not live on your YouTube channel yet. Just giving you guys a heads up on that.
It is running right now.
Okay, I don't see it popping up on your YouTube channel. We'll try again.
I'll pull it up on my end.
Let me know if it's. So it's running.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, so it is live and there's 19 people watching.
Okay,
So he may want
You got
to.
it.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Is there anybody else in the hall that would like to make general public comment in the community hall? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make general public comment, not about the hearing? Yeah,
PO Box 942 Cannon Beach. So a public comment allows the public to talk about anything and the board may question them, but no further action is discussed or allowed. That's Robert's Rules of Order. So on a public comment, we have the right to speak about what we feel we need to address to the council. So that being said, I just wanted to point that out. But I think the biggest thing and I know Jim Pano said something last week. There are many of your constituents who do not feel that they are being heard. You may be listening, but they don't feel that they're being heard. And that is extremely important. And by you saying that we can't comment on anything to do with the hearing is another way of saying you don't want to hear what we have to say.
no, it's the timing of when you're gonna say it.
So if we can speak during the hearing, then that should be put out. I feel that should be put out to everyone, that it is fine for us to speak during the hearing if we have a comment for that and the process for that, according to the city. Anyway, thank you for hearing me on that. And one thing that I would like to say to the council is when they did the striping in front, see, I'm going to completely change the subject. When they did the striping in front of the post office, the 10-minute parking spaces, the way that they put the white little bracket lines, they're a foot back. So it's a foot back from the green line, and then the back line actually runs into the approach of the market, where the actual approach is. So they weren't placed properly. So that might be something somebody would look into. Thank you very much. You guys have a good evening.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Chamber has her hand up again.
Okay, chamber. And then Tom Mac.
We're on a little bit of a delay, so I just wanted to give everybody here the opportunity to speak that wanted to speak. I know there's at least 3 people that want to talk, so I didn't know if you wanted to go with us or have your people there go. Your call.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me grab the first person.
Okay.
This is public testimony on items that are not on the agenda. People will have time to talk about items on the agenda during the public hearing, correct?
Right.
Maybe not. Okay.
Or a question if Jim understands that.
Let me grab the first.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
We can hear you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Alexander, PO Box 1148. I am just wanting to say that with respect, you guys were voted in by this community and you guys aren't being paid to do this. You guys and all of us, like, you're part of the community and so are we. And I feel that people aren't listening and you guys aren't hired. And I just hope that you guys think about what we've had to say and you guys consider what's best for the people that actually live here and not just the people that are visiting in all aspects. And you guys take a moment to actually like have a little, not necessarily wake up call, but open your mind to and your hearts to the people that live here, that work here, that love this town just as much as the tourists do, just as much as you guys do. You guys, wanted to be part of city council. You guys want to make changes and make this town better, but you have to make it better for everyone, not just the people that are going to bring money into this town. We're bringing money to this town as regular citizens by working here and providing the services that we're promising the people that visit this town. And I hope that you guys recognize that a little bit more and really take that thought into consideration when you're making any changes or any decisions when it comes to this town. You really need to focus on all of those aspects. Maybe bring it together a little bit more because I feel like it's very off the mark. I really appreciate your time and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Okay, here's number 2.
Thank you.
Tell me, don't tell me.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Lolly Champion, PO Box 614-97110. I have a fiscal question to ask. I would like to know how the community will be informed on the declining balance of the 25 million for the 2 projects, City Hall and the police station, and the 12 million that have been stated for the school property. I know that we've had people online being paid currently. I know that there has been no bonds gotten or interest rates or the amount of that has been determined. So I would like to see a declining balance for each of those projects so we know how much we have already spent towards the maximum amount that's been promised by the city council and the amount of debt that we will be incurring and already have incurred, where that money has been paid from. I can assume maybe some of it from the food tax, and I know that the lodging tax doesn't kick in until January 1. So again, I would like to know somehow how we will get regular fiscal updates on the declining balances of the 25 million and the 12 million. Thank you for listening, and I hope to receive an answer for all of us.
Thank you.
Okay, here's number 3.
Okay. Hello. My name is Michelle Valagura. I'm at PO Box 719. I'm speaking solely as an independent citizen. Hello, council members. Thank you all for all that you do. I understand how hard it is to be in this position. I completely acknowledge that it's a different sitting in the chair as opposed to just being a member of the audience with an opinion. I feel for all the members of the city council. This is a tough evening.
But I would like to read a little bit from the comprehensive plan, the vision statement. The intent of the city is to plan for the modest level of growth over the next 2 decades. This growth should occur in small increments, steps that allow the community to evolve in its desired direction without disruption to the fabric of the life of the community. The fundamental principle of the plan is to foster a community with a strong sense of place, which provides its residents with the quality of life that they desire. A little further down, Cannon Beach will continue to plan for a balance between the residential and resort elements of the community. In achieving this balance, the emphasis will be placed on managing the resort aspect of Cannon Beach in a manner that is not disruptive to the residential character of the community. I just want to thank everybody of the city council for all that they do, and I appreciate you. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Jim?
All right, I believe that's everybody. Just a point of clarification, is there's gonna be opponent and proponent testimony during the proceedings?
Yes.
Or no?
Yes.
Okay. I'll raise my hand if anybody wants to talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Tom?
Tom Landrum, P.O. Box 8, Cannon Beach. Worked as a project manager on many world-class projects. This is nothing compared to what I've worked on, but this is being mismanaged. Our project manager is not managing the project. I come from a strong PMO background. We've got detailed gates that you have to go through to turn a concept into a project. We've never had, that I've ever seen or heard of, a detailed written scope of work for each one of these endeavors. It doesn't exist, but we're well underway with a preliminary design from an architect firm, which doesn't seem to be meeting what we're wanting. Now, I don't know if it's because Bruce doesn't have the right concept in his head, or if these architects are supposed to glean from these meetings, because they've been in just about every meeting, what we were looking for. It missed the boat. It really had. Now, it's unfair that our city manager has to do the city management job and the project management job. In my experience, a project manager job is full-time. He's going to have a lot of things that he's going to be paying detailed attention to. There's all kinds of things that are going to come up in dealing with these contractors. Number one, if you take a look across the street over here at Surf Sand, see all those containers out there? That's going to be even worse here. All they're doing is a facelift over there. You're talking about excavating, erecting steel, putting up siding, interior. It's going to be a mess. You're going to have to relocate all the people working here into containers, trailers. A whole lot of thought process needs to go into this. In other words, are you going to just rent units? Are you going to purchase some? Are you going to put them on different locales? The infrastructure that goes with it, wiring, water piping, sewage piping. There's a lot of work that needs to go into this. And I think it's unfair to ask Bruce to do all that. He's got a job, full-time job right now. I saw this quite a few months back. Mike Benefield was hired as a project manager for the city. And I said, oh, there you go. That's what they're going to do. No, he's running little projects around the city. I thought he was going to be picking the ball up. I don't know if that option's still on the table, but it needs to be considered because you got a tall task coming, and I don't think right now you're prepared for it. Yeah, Bruce has got a general contractor. I don't know anything about him. I don't know how much he's going to be able to assist, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we all need to be thinking about it. I think we're asking too much of Bruce. I think he thinks he's up for the task, but it's a hell of a job. we're gonna be trying to do all this in our busy season. So, keep all that in mind. Gonna have tourists in town, and this is gonna be all congested with stuff. We need to do things like think through this thing. The police station design, I think still has some problems, the preliminary design. But out of everything that we're looking at, you may be able to move forward with that quicker than you can anything. And if you do that and get it in place, you could share some of that infrastructure with the city staff. I'm trying to just point out that there's a lot of thought that needs to go into it. You can't just, we're going to start. I know the architects want to get into detailed design right now, and no, we're not ready. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do with these things. The other thing I wanted to touch on, I don't know if you're going to cut me off or not.
It's getting close.
But anyway, the city staff image. I'd never even given a second thought until Karen Labonte convicted of ethics violations. Okay, you just got a member of the House kicked out, not because he was convicted, but because there was innuendo. I'm not a defender of him by any means, okay? There's liable to be a little bit of fire.
Okay, Tom,
But-
wrap it up, please.
Okay, all right, well, I know I'm touching on a sensitive subject, but anyway. Not only was she convicted, I'd have lost my PE license, I'd have been fired. I'm not saying that that's what should have happened. When the city said, oh, we're gonna pay the fine. A lot of eyebrows went up. She may have been following orders. If that's the case, somebody should have stepped forward and said, I told her to do that. That didn't happen.
Okay, thank you.
More.
Thanks. Anybody else in the audience?
Mary Peterson, P.O. Box 85, Tolovana, 97145. I am very late to the party and I apologize, but I believe in what Ronald Reagan said when he said, 9 worst words are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. That has been my experience since long before I moved to Cannon Beach from this body. So I have stayed away, but I can't any longer. I came to last week's meeting and I thought about it a lot. I heard a lot of people talk. Some of it I agreed with, some of it I did not. But I want to propose something to you that will put you back at square one. That in listening to all of the people that I heard speak, I think will be something the community can get behind. And I might take a little longer, but there's some history and I want to share it. I think there was a lot really good said, and I think this city can do better than what is proposed. I grew up in Southwest Washington in a little town, bigger than Cannon Beach, but a little town. And just north of us was Kalama, Washington. And in the late 50s, a steering trailer hauled a 140-foot pole from the Gifford Pinchot National Forest to Kalama, Washington. They moved it behind the Clam Inn restaurant, and Chief Laluska did what at that time was the tallest one-piece totem pole in the United States. It stood in Kalama until just a few years ago, and now it is down on the ground and they were doing some repairs. Chief Laluska moved to my town, Woodland, Washington, 7 miles down the road, and lived 2 miles further east up Lewis River Road. He moved there with his mother, his younger brother, Farron Smith, who in high school we called Smitty, his sister Dawn, her husband, and they created a cultural center that has been there since probably the 60s. I graduated from high school in 71. Farron was younger than me, but I know he was in my high school. My younger brother's 2.5 years younger. He was in between the two of us. That cultural center closed with COVID. It's being remodeled and it just reopened this fall. They serve 11,000 students a year from surrounding schools. It is a small structure. They are adding on to it now, but you don't need huge to make an impact. You need sincerity and truth in what you're doing, and they have that. What I propose to this council is a three-way thing. You find that the area is a larger area. I think if you are creative, you can put some in housing for employees who work here. They will be long-term, no short-term rental. You can put a beautiful longhouse. You can put that to serve things. It will be interpretive. You can do walking paths. And out near the estuary, you can put a pavilion covered where people can sit and hear the wind and see the sand and watch the estuary and the birds and the elks. And I think that is far more fitting and far more historically appropriate than what you're doing. And I know I am late to the game. I know that means you have to drop everything you've done and go backwards. But think about it, and is it truly more fitting for a small town like Cannon Beach? And will it truly put something special on the map? We have lots of event set space in Cannon Beach, and some of it's all very nice. Do we need to replicate that? I think personally it is morally wrong, if not legally wrong, for you to take money that the hotels have taken in for you and use it against them. And that is what you're doing when you build that large event center. We don't need 500 people. What we need is something meaningful. It can be small, but it can serve a lot of people of all ages and bring something truly special. Chief Waluska is gone. His son, brother is now the chief. But they truly, truly represent something special. And they have been in the same location since the late 60s. And I know that because I live 2 miles from there. And I have a lot of history there. So please at least consider what I've said. I know it puts you back, but it's far less expensive. And to me, it brings together, it stops the strife. We have too much strife already in Cannon Beach. You need to do something to bring people back together. And if you want a legacy, that is the greatest legacy you can give to Cannon Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Anybody on Zoom?
Is public comment or is this pro and con?
Right now, this is the public comment portion. We haven't started the hearing. But we're about ready to. Nobody wants to say anything else. Okay. So we're going to close the public comment and go to the public hearing. This is a public hearing on APP 2307, appeal of a design review board decision. This is a hearing regarding the appeal requested by CETA Incorporated, applicant on behalf of the city of Cannon Beach for the rejuvenation project of the Cannon Beach Elementary School buildings and Nakus Park site for use by Cannon Beach visitors and residents, businesses, and the Clatsop-Nehalem Confederated Tribe for a variety of community interests. The appeal will be reviewed against the criteria of Municipal Code Chapter 17.44.080 through 1744.100 design review criteria. The hearing will be held on the record and no new evidence will be allowed into the record. On November 28th, the City Council held a work session where it heard from many members of this community, both in favor and opposed to the city proceeding with the development of this project. This work session related to the proprietary of proceedings with the development, which is separate and distinct from receiving the project design, which is the subject of this appeal. Because the record for this appeal is closed, council will refrain from considering any testimony received during the November 28th work session as part of its evaluation of whether the design review criteria set forth in Cannon Beach Municipal Code 17.44.080 through 0.100 are satisfied. If any counselor has concerns with their ability or readiness to not consider the November 28th testimony, they should make those concerns known during the disclosures portion of this hearing that follows. So I'm going to open the public hearing. And the record for this proceeding includes all of the written materials provided during the proceedings before the Design Review Board, as well as the videos of the September 21st and October 19th Design Review Board meetings. Please confirm that all of you have received these materials, videos, and are prepared to consider this matter based solely on that record, as well as whatever argument, not new evidence, presented on appeal. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the City Council to hear this appeal at this time? Does any counselor believe he or she has a personal bias to declare? Does any counselor believe he or she has a conflict of interest? In addition to the November 28th work session, has any counselor had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit?
Site visit?
Site visit.
Site visit. Is there any additional correspondence?
There were a few emails that I sent out today.
Okay, so ready for the staff report.
Thanks, Mayor. In October, the City of Cannon Beach Design Review Board decision to deny the rejuvenation of the former Cannon Beach Elementary School buildings into a tourism-oriented facility located at 268 Beaver Street. Dustin Johnson of CETA Inc. on behalf of the owner, the City of Cannon Beach, requested an appeal of the Design Review Board decision. The City Council recently held a scope of review meeting and determined that the appeal will be heard on the record of the decision made by the Design Review Board. The proposed project is an adaptive reuse of the former Cannon Beach Elementary School for the use by visitors, residents, local businesses as a facility housing interpretive space about local culture, history, and ecology that can host a variety of both indoor and outdoor events and activities. Presently, there are 3 structures on the property: the classroom building, gym building, and the prefabricated overflow classroom that currently houses the local food bank. 2 of these structures, the classroom and the gym, are affected by the applications that's before you this evening. The food bank is not part of the application. As this is an adaptive reuse project, new construction will be minimized and not exceed the general footprint of the existing buildings. As the classroom and gym buildings do not presently conform to the current setback requirements, the city sought a setback reduction and partial vacation of Beaver Street right-of-way in order to accommodate off-street parking and the proposed primary entrance that will be constructed to connect the gym to the classroom building. The Planning Commission approved this application during its May 2023 public hearing. Additionally, a variance to off-street parking requirements was approved by the Plan Commission during its January 2023 hearing. The proposed rejuvenation project will result in a total of 14,440 square feet of building area. The open spaces on the site will be improved to create outdoor event space, provide cultural activities, and otherwise enhance the area that is currently open lawn. Spaces for public art, including murals, and a statue will be provided as part of the project. The applicant will go through a lot of the information. I know you're familiar with it. I did have a message from the chairman of the Design Review Board, Dave Doring, who wanted me to remind the council that the minutes of the October 19th Design Review Board meeting, which are included in the packet, have not been approved by the Design Review Board in their current state. He states that they should not be relied on for accuracy by the council. That being said, both meetings have been on YouTube and available for the council as well as the public to review and listen to. And you do have the design review board's findings of fact, both in the staff report and in your packet that you can also refer to with regards to the action taken by the design review board. So with that, I'll be here to answer any additional questions, but Dustin Johnson from CETA is here and he can speak more towards the application.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Dustin.
Good evening, Mayor Knopp and City Council, and thank you everyone who's there in attendance and being a part of this appeal hearing tonight. I'm going to be real quick in my presentation to council out of respect for, I know there's a lot of people there that want to talk tonight. City Council knows this project as good as I do. So I would really like to focus on the process, how we got to where we are right now, design revisions that occurred between when we presented for the DRB for the first DRB hearing to when we re-presented for the hearing continuation. And then lastly, I'm not going to go through all of the findings of fact. There are some that do require a little more background into how the design and team had intended to meet the design criteria. I will give a brief synopsis of those. I've got some pre-prepared bullet points that I'll read from. In total, I'm going to try to get through this in 15 to 20 minutes. At the end of that, I'm happy to answer any questions from council for additional details that I may not have covered. So CETA started this project about 19 or 20 months ago. The first 15 months were dedicated to the discovery process and subsequently to the discovery process, which lasted about 3 months, the schematic design process. So what do I mean by discovery? We had 3 community outreach events in which we met with the general public. From those meetings, and we had quite a nice turnout. We've estimated about 100 unique individuals participated in providing information. We surveyed them, we interviewed, and we developed what we call a programming discovery packet. That packet is used to reinforce every decision made in the design of the project from that moment forward. There's no pen to paper during this period. It's simply just meeting with the public and getting a taste for what they would like to see in this project, but also what are their concerns? What are the risks that we need to address? Following that was the schematic design process. We had multiple community outreach events where we proposed in the beginning 4 designs, including what we called a baseline design. That baseline design was meant to meet and not exceed the program requirements that were developed during the discovery process. The goal for schematic design was to keep coming back through these community outreach events and public city council work sessions and start minimizing the number of options down by the end of the process to 1. And then that process, that scheme would be priced. But it wasn't just 4 options. Through each city council work session or community outreach event, the ones that remained would be revised to be in line with what we were hearing at the time. So in that sense, we're considering not only the programming document created during the discovery packet, but also current sentiment that we heard from the previous COE and carrying that forward. After that, COE number 7 was focused on pricing the preferred design option. And then post that COE, CETA is approved to move forward into design development. That's the phase that we are in right now. And that's when we, approximately midway through the design development process, we submitted for DRB approval. And that's what we are here tonight, is appealing the decision made with the DRB application. With that, I'm going to share my screen. You all are very familiar with the design. I just want to focus on design changes that were made between the DRB initial hearing and the continuation. If you could please confirm that you can see what I'm looking at on my screen.
Yes.
Here. Okay. The previous design that we initially presented to DRB for the Heritage Garden and the Southeast Plaza looked like this. And you can see that we've got our Southeast Entry Plaza over here on the right. This is an expanded view. It's not showing the whole site, but design revisions were limited to this area of the site. You're seeing the Thunderbird head that is created with the Heritage Garden. That is the portion of the garden that offers an interpretive experience to those who wish it, experiencing the site. You've got the estuary to the north, and then Nakus Park off to the west here. That was the previous design. Some things we heard during that first DRB meeting from the Design Review Board. We feel like there's too many trees. We feel like the Heritage Garden is too complicated. We feel like, and I'm speaking in terms of the DRB, we feel like there needs to be view corridors from the First Street right-of-way, which is along this side here, into the public realm of Nakus Park. That would allow people who maybe are used to just walking into this park to feel welcome to do that and to not be blocked by all this proposed vegetation. The Design Review Board wanted to see a more direct route to get through this interpretive garden to the back of the site, making a very good point that we have people who visit this site frequently who are not going to want the interpretive experience every single time they visit. That was the gist. There were many more comments made. These comments we felt like we were able to address in the time that we had. We came back with a revised design that looks like this. We reduced the number of trees significantly. We've maintained view corridors. We've offered this site, this path that comes up through the Southeast Entry Plaza, bypasses the interpretive experience of the Thunderbird Garden, and shoots you right into the public realm of the project. Looking at it in a slightly different graphic, the pink on the screen right here is pedestrian connectivity. These are all the ways that people can infiltrate into the public realm of Nakus Park through or bypassing the Heritage Garden. The blue are the view corridors. So we have a view corridor up here that's lightly shaded in blue. That's approximately from where the existing crosswalk crosses First Street and confronts the site. And then you have this much larger view corridor. That's as you're driving in from town off of Highway 101, crossing the First Street Bridge. So the intent with the revised design is to keep trees out of those view corridors so that there's a transparency from the public right-of-way of Fir Grove into the public realm of Nakus Park on the project site. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Okay, I promise I'd be quick. The rest of this presentation is about looking at the code criteria, that criteria that may need a little more background as to how the design team had intended to meet it, and that criteria which the DRB has determined failed to, that the project had failed to meet. The first thing, so we break this up into three categories, the code does. It's site design, architectural design, and landscape design. What I wanted to give a few bullet points on in starting with the site design is, and it's stated in the code, the arrangement of all functions, uses, and improvements has been designed so as to reflect and harmonize with the natural characteristics and limitations of the site and adjacent site. And again, I'm going to read some pre-prepared bullets here. This is an adaptive reuse project of existing landmark structures and site. The existing structures are proposed to be maintained and treated with new materials and refreshed material palette intended to reflect the existing Cannon Beach vernacular. For example, the existing classroom building is one of very few structures in Cannon Beach that features a clay brick facade. In response to this code section, we have proposed that clay facade material to be replaced with cedar shake, which is a ubiquitous material in Cannon Beach and throughout the Oregon coast. In addition to cedar shake, other expressions of cedar finish systems common in Cannon Beach are represented, and as an element of interest and added texture, such finishes include cedar plank siding as well as board and batten siding. Additionally, the project aims to reestablish native plantings, many species of which were removed to make way for the school's playground and school parking. Lastly, there is a significant cultural heritage aspect of this site and project. The design of the site, i.e. Thunderbird Garden, Story Circle, etc., and reuse of these structures place a priority of educating visitors about this heritage through interpretive means. The second site design code criteria states, in terms of setback from the street or sidewalk, the design creates a visually interesting and compatible relationship between the proposed structures and/or adjacent structures. I'm going to combine my response with the second piece of code here. Where appropriate, the design includes a parking and circulation system that encourages a pedestrian rather than vehicle orientation, including a separate service area for delivery of goods. So response, as discussed at the DRB hearing, a partial vacation of North Beaver Street was requested and granted by the Planning Commission for the primary purpose of pedestrian safety and pedestrian wayfinding. The vacation resulted in a 30-foot right-of-way, which will accommodate two 12-foot 6-inch drive lanes tight with the Cannon Beach Elementary curb. That leaves a 5-foot remainder of the southern portion of the right-of-way to be graveled, similar to existing. Existing paved width is approximately 35 feet. However, this width accommodates 8 to 10 feet of parallel parking along the Cannon Beach Elementary curb and leaves a vehicular way of somewhere between 25 and 27 feet, or 2 lanes at 12-foot 6 to 13-foot 6 each. It should be noted the actual amount of space for pedestrians between the building and the street is much greater with the existing design. That was the, again, pedestrian wayfinding, pedestrian circulation, pedestrian safety was the primary purpose of requesting that vacation, that partial vacation of North Beaver. As far as parking, 7 stalls are proposed to be provided on site directly adjacent to the North Beaver public right-of-way. That's an added net of 4 parking spots for the project. Additionally, commercial delivery is proposed to be accommodated with a loading pullout south of the gym building. That was on both of the presentations to DRB. That pullout is also intended to accommodate event shuttles as well as pickup drop-off occasions. And the next piece of code is in the portion of architectural design. That code section states, the design avoids monotony and provides visual interest and charm by giving sufficient attention to architectural details and to such design elements as texture, pattern, and color. As you can imagine, much of the DRB comments related to that particular code section are as a result of the existing size and shape of the gym building's roof, which is close to a barrel vault, Quonset style. In order to address the height and scale of the gym roof, the design proposes to ground the structure by giving it a 2-foot concrete base. The base is intended to add a human scale to the structure while bringing up the verticality of the roofing material. Additionally, in response to comments made regarding this topic at the first DRB meeting, CETA proposed to try saving the large cedar tree directly adjacent to on the east side of the gym, as preserving that natural mass would help to break up the length of the roof structure. I do believe this is feasible. Again, there are other things that play into this. The depth of the materials proposed for that space, the level of grading, but being that we are on a very sensitive, culturally sensitive and archaeologically sensitive site, mass grading is not an option. Saving of the tree is dependent on the tree's root system and level of grading needed to accommodate the proposed Southeast Plaza design. Also, a large exterior canvas intended to promote the local artist culture of Cannon Beach is proposed at the southeast corner of the gym. This canvas is about 8 feet high, and that's including the 2-foot base. Its intent is to draw one's eye from the large roof mass, as well as break up the verticality of the overall scale of the gym with another design element. Lastly, the material chosen for that roof is standing seam metal. It's a proposal. There's a few reasons why we're proposing standing seam roof. It's a metal roof. It lasts much longer than what's on there right now, which is composite shingle. Also, the intent of it is to choose a medium gray that is intended to be discreet. It is by no means intended to draw the eye towards the scale and mass of that roof. The design intent is exactly opposite of that. These next few, and I'm almost done, are related to the landscaping standards. So the first one states, the design substantially complements the natural environment of Cannon Beach and the character of the site. And our response to how we meet that is that by incorporating native plantings throughout the site and removing non-native invasive species, number one. Number two, by retaining large stands of native spruce and other native species, even if singular, allowing them to maintain the natural essence of the site, both in a visual way, but also in an experiential way. Additionally, the character of the site is largely defined by historic cultural heritage. The design aims to resonate with the historic uses of the site while minimizing site disturbance and preserving potential tribal artifacts. A couple more points on this code section as well. There were some questions brought up with regard to the experience of our team with landscape architecture. Joyce Jackson, LLA, the landscape architect on the project, selected plant species of native plants with a proven history of adapting to that climate. Native plantings are a specialty of JJLA, the short name for Joyce Jackson Landscape Architects. In between DRB meetings, JJLA performed an in-person survey of residual plantings to help inform the success of different native species with regards to elk resistance. This survey was limited to a 300-yard radius from the project site. As a result of this survey, the updated plan was revised to feature only those plants that have survived the exposed marine environment and degree of elk foraging found at NACUS Park. Of note, JGLA has 44 years professional experience, 27 of which are as an Oregon licensed landscape architect. She has successfully designed landscape plans for a variety of uses, including commercial, civic, recreation, parks, institutional, and streetscapes. She's trained with the Army Corps of Engineers. She was a former wetland delineator and management of sensitive and specialized in management of sensitive areas. The next piece of code, I only have 2 left.
Oh my God.
Discusses the creativity used for the landscape plans for the site. Our response is the garden is designed in the form of the Thunderbird. It is a culturally significant figure in tribal Clatsic Nehalem heritage. Specifically, the Thunderbird garden at Nakus takes the shape of the Thunderbird's head as it faces the egg of origin, with the welcome figure rising from the egg, symbolizing the tribe's creation. As an interpretive garden, the plants of the Thunderbird garden are imagined to have associated identification placards, which identify the plant and its values to the ancestral Clatsic Nehalem. For example, craft or food or recreation or other. And this last piece of code section deals with low maintenance of plants. With our revised plan that we came back to DRB at the second DRB hearing, we reduced the number of tree and shrub and ground cover species by 25 to 28%. It's 25 for trees, I think, and 28% for shrubs and ground covers. We reduced the number of trees in the Thunderbird garden from 30 trees to 8. That's for maintenance reduction, for elk resistance. If the elk were to come in and feast on our garden, it would have less overall impact. But most importantly, in responding to the DRB comments, it's for maintaining those view corridors. The proposed temporary fencing, we propose temporary fencing for elk resistance for duration of time required to allow new plantings to establish themselves. That is just temporary fencing. It is anticipated to be removed once the plants have been established. And lastly, the area of the manicured turf is less than existing. Manicured turf requires weekly or semi-weekly mowing and growing seasons, in addition to scheduling fertilization, aeration, dethatching, and weed control. Native landscapes by their nature are low maintenance, generally requiring once established periodic weeding and trimming. And with that, that concludes my presentation to council. Again, as stated before, happy to go into further detail. I've got drawings pulled up on my screen that were presented during the DRB. I can also reference those as well for council if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to call for public testimony. The pertinent criteria to be considered by the city council are identified in the staff reports. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be already in the record and directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. In addition, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval will preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition for the mayor, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they request. Testimony is limited to matters which are raised by the design review board hearing in writing or orally. Is there a presentation by the appellant? Which I believe we've had.
I think you already heard from the appellant. They're the applicant. They're the same party.
Thank you. Are there presentations by proponents? Are there presentations by opponents?
Two.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jen, sorry.
Can I just note that statement we have about the length is actually on the next line. We probably should have moved that up.
Okay, so you know 3 minutes.
I know that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
So I'm Jan Siebert Warmond, and this letter is also from my husband, Wes Warmond. P.O. Box 778, Cannon Beach. Dear Mayor and City Councilors, is it possible to listen to all the voices of our community and the Clatsop Nehalem tribal members and find a way forward together for Nakus that honors the local tribal history and culture, that honors the Cannon Beach Elementary School history and culture, that honors the present Cannon Beach community culture, and that enriches the culture of the future by serving as an indoor, outdoor, educational, historical, cultural, environmental, and arts center? Is it possible to grandfather in the gym building, which has served the community for decades, for school meetings, festivals, recreation, the Haystack program in the arts, and choral concerts, etc.? Is it possible to restore the gym and to hold Clatsop Nehalem cultural gatherings, such as the welcoming of the salmon celebration, where the large space can accommodate everyone who would like to attend? Is it possible to find condition in which the site design, architectural design, and landscape design of Nakus could be creatively simplified so as to be more reflective of the quaint village character and the budgeting concerns of the community, and still show respect and integrity in the designs for the Clatsop Nehalem people? With the dedication of all of us who care about Nakus, let's pull together and put our energy into finding solutions. It is our belief that yes, together we can do this and do it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Other presentations by proponents? Betty?
Betty Guerin, P.O. Box 137. In the process of creating the vision for Nakus, a solid majority of the community that came to the meetings pushed hard to keep the old school buildings. Others stressed the need to incorporate green technology into the buildings. The tribes have devoted hours with the architects trying to adapt the old with the new, taking all public comments into consideration. The gym has always been out of code and a big barrel roof that does not fit the village character. That has not stopped the community from gatherings, spending many happy hours in the gym, attending community events, which have created treasured memories. It is and can remain a well-used and well-loved building. The large size and barrel roof is a small price we pay to keep the gym. The white painted classroom roof is a small price to pay for moving towards sustainable building methods. Let's think of all the amazing gatherings we can have in this large, safe, and green building. It has always been large, but loved. There is no way to reduce its size and also keep the building. It will be, as it has always been, a gathering place for community, and the classrooms will still provide a place for learning and sharing knowledge while becoming more energy efficient. I would like to celebrate our council members who are trying to achieve a consensus on this very difficult issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other presentations by proponents in the audience? Okay, so now we'll go to the community hall. Are there any presentations by proponents? Okay, then we'll move to Zoom. Are there presentations from proponents? And you need to raise your hand so that we know you want to speak. Okay. Nothing? Okay. Are there presentations by opponents? And again, I want to remind you that it's a 3-minute or less presentation. Anybody in the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, four specific comments that I'm going to talk about. I'll start with 2 of the criteria points. Try and locate them. One was commenting on the landscaping. Number D, provisions have been made for the survival and continuous maintenance of the landscape and its vegetation. As far as I'm concerned, the design is dependent on professional landscapers. The original intent, as I remember, was trying to figure out how to use volunteers. I don't think the design as presented allows us to work with a volunteer base. On the architectural comments, F, project is unusually large, or if it is likely to become a village landmark or an introduction transition. I believe it is a village landmark already. It is obviously an introduction for the town. The key point to me is the last few words where it is the criteria in an exemplary standard setting fashion. This is very, everybody's going to have a different definition of exemplary. Great, I like it. Standard setting fashion. I'm always going to go back to, I think that my sense of the original intent was to be much more village-like and less industrial looking. So that's not relating to size, it's just to me how the feel of the building changes with the design that's presented. Given that, I want to go back to what Dustin introduced us about the process. And the discovery process, the schematic process, all went very well. I totally agree that we did a beautiful job collecting as much information as possible on these. The problem comes when we got down to one design project and the estimates came in, the pricing for the final scheme was never allowed to be critiqued after it was priced. As soon as we get a feeling of how much something costs, there should have been the ability to come in and say, oh, wait a minute, that might be a little too much. That was never allowed. So what we jumped straight into was designing a bucket load of dreams. So I think that's where this process has failed us, and we are winding up with so much division at this moment. So I just want to say, ask yourself why so many, including a city committee, feel the direction as proposed is not consistent with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Andrew County, PO Box 664, Toloba Park. The kind of want to piggyback on what Sam says a little bit. A lot of people have gotten to tell the story of how we got here, and I want to give my own take on it. There's been a lot of assertions that this design came from community outreach, and that's only a half truth. When outreach events were performed during COVID, there was a concerning lack of clarity there. When we were surveyed, we weren't told this is going to be primarily a tourism facility. The attention that I received, and I think a lot of people thought, is this is going to be for us, the community, come in here and tell me what you'd like to see. And on that list of tell me what you'd like to see, there wasn't an asterisk up there that said, we're going to pay for this with TLT funds. So primarily tourism activities are always going to take precedence here. And certain ones are not going to be straight up, aren't going to be allowed. That was not how the process went. At the time of those meetings, and just to follow, we as a community were under the impression that this was a facelift in the neighborhood of $4 million. It was, it was a lot more palatable to many of us than 3 times that price. So it's hard to say that the public has been so thoroughly surveyed. I think there's people out there that still don't know that this is being proposed as a tourism first facility. So we haven't been so thorough. This isn't so thoroughly surveyed. The ground just keeps changing underneath this project. The school was redesigned before we knew what we're going to do with it. We're still not sure what we're going to do with it. There was the tourism tax was raised after the price came out. And only then was a community committee, which I sit on, put together to try to decide what we would do with it. Again, that feels weird. Why would you go and hire architects to design a building that you don't know what is going to be done inside with? And then that's, and I really feel for you guys on architects that see I think you would put in a position to just put the cart before the horse so many times that, it's what created all this division, because we just done this backwards from the very start. And I think that process, it's no wonder then why the DRB was confused, put off, and ultimately denied this application, because it was done in a giant backwards jumble. So yeah, I think process is why we're here.
Thank you. Any other opponents in the audience? No?
PO Box 865. I really think that last presenter hit it spot on. I really don't think we know what we're going to do with it yet. I think a lot of ideas got put in the bucket and we're trying to satisfy everybody's idea. And I really think we need to focus on what we really want to do with this. Now, who's going to be the decider? I don't know. Hopefully the council take this on and help figure this out. It's a mess, Everybody wants to please everybody, and you can't always do that.
Thank you. Any other opponents?
One thing that really concerns me, Mayor Peterson, that concerns me about this is they are saying how wonderful the information they got from 100 people out of 1,600. That's far less than 10%. So do you want to listen to just 10% of the town? That's all you care about? It took way more than that to elect you. But 10% is nothing. So maybe they didn't listen. They didn't send out things correctly. Or maybe people don't like this project at all and so didn't care. And they don't want it. You don't know, because you've never asked the question. Why did a town of 1,600 only have 100 responses? That's the question you should be asking yourself before you ever vote on this. And solve that problem, and then move forward.
Thank you. Any other opponents in the audience? Okay, next we'll go to the community hall. Are there any opponents that would like to speak? Any opponents in community hall? Okay, then we'll move to Zoom. Are there any opponents on Zoom? If you would raise your hand if you want to speak. Okay, go ahead.
Are you there, Watt?
Okay, sorry, didn't know it was I was up, I apologize. Watt Childress, 40660 North Fork Road, Nehalem, Oregon, 97131. My wife and I and family own Jupiter's Books in downtown Cannon Beach. We own a lot in Cannon Beach as well on Ross Lane. Few points. When designing something, it seems like you really need to have a needs assessment. You need to have a clear understanding. This has been mentioned by some of the other commenters of what you're doing it for. And whereas I understand these discovery listening outreach sessions were done for the general public, there are key existing stakeholders that need to be included in order to not duplicate services when designing what you're designing. And one is the Cannon Beach History Center and Museum. It's become clearer and clearer to me that they did not have the role in really communicating what they're doing, making sure that what they're doing isn't going to be duplicated with the proposed design here. And a couple of other things. Capacity building, we're built on volunteerism. Our boards, our committees, our commissions all run on volunteerism. Same energy that's going to make sure that this landscaping works, that make sure anything works that's going to creatively, our capacity to creatively deal with issues in the community all hinge on capacity. And my concern is that if you simply deny the design review board's position, if you overturn their decision, it's really going to be diminishing our capacity to work as a community. And so what I would recommend is that you approve the design review board's decision with strong recommendations for how they can move forward and strengthen their relationship with the architects so that we can keep going and not lose momentum. Third and last thing, Thunderbird is a very important sacred symbol for all the tribes of this area. There are people of Clatsop descent who are enrolled in neighboring tribes that we need to make sure that all of these stakeholders feel that this is going to be a unifying symbol that brings everybody together. In addition to Clatsop, Nehalem Confederated Tribes, we have Chinook, Siletz, Grand Ronde, and folks who, like I say, are enrolled at Tillamook, folks that are enrolled elsewhere. We just need to make absolutely certain that if we're going to do a design that includes a Thunderbird, that it's something that everybody can celebrate. And I appreciate your all's hard work, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Randy?
Randy Neal, P.O. Box 1092. First of all, I want to say I wholeheartedly agree with comments made by Jan and Sam and Andrew and now Watt. I really wish we had more time to go through and really understand how to make this right. And I sort of apologize for bringing up this next point, but maybe it's the way we get the time to figure out what's right. So basically I wonder if you really have a valid appeal. Page 7 of the packet list is the appeal form. And at the bottom says there's a fee for every appeal. There's nothing that I see that says the city is exempt from paying that fee. At the bottom of all the other appeals I've ever seen, the fee and the receipt number, basically there's a stamp that says there's a fee that's been paid. The city does fund accounting, and basically each project has to be costed and compiled within its separate funds. So, it seems like there should be a fee that would be applied to this project that, could be refunded if overturned. So I just question do we really have a valid appeal application? And then secondly, I question, do we have a valid appeal within the 14-day window? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the Zoom audience that would like to speak? Opponents? Okay. Is there a staff response?
No.
Do we want to talk about this?
Yeah, but there was a fee paid on this by us.
It was paid on it.
Okay.
The applicant, CETA, submitted the application and then I processed the claim form with this payment. But because I had that, so it was definitely paid.
Great, thank you.
That was also submitted within that 14-day appeal period.
Okay, thanks. Does the appellant or proponents wish to make additional statements? Dustin?
No, but I think Carrie was trying to make a point.
Okay. Carrie?
Sorry to interrupt the flow. I just wanted to make a couple of observations with respect to the testimony that you heard tonight. The first thing, and I think the council understands this, there's the difference between the question about, from a proprietary perspective, whether or not the city proceeds with this project. And that is separate and discrete from the land use review, which is a quasi-judicial determination that is before the council for consideration with respect to certain criteria. So the city council can approve this, find that it satisfies the standards, and still decide not to build it because it costs too much or because for a number of many other reasons why any owner wouldn't pursue a project. So I just want the council to be aware that those are two separate things. I think you understand, but I want to make that distinction, to highlight that distinction. The second thing I wanted to point out real quick is that the scope of a design review is limited to new construction and new additions. It's a little strange here because this application is for an adaptive reuse project that prioritize retaining and enhancing the existing structures. And so I think the criteria have to be applied to consider only what is changing and whether that change is responsive to the design review criterion. Things that are not changing, like the food pantry, the overall scale of the gymnasium roof, the color of the elementary school roof, Those do not provide a basis to conclude that the criteria are not satisfied. Similarly, I want to remind the council that planning commission approved adjustments and variances or a city council approved road vacation do not in and of themselves conclusively determine that the site orientation design standards are not satisfied. I think what the applicant testified to was that that those adjustments actually result in greater pedestrian amenities and greater front setback for the proposed development. Finally, I want to point out that the criteria did not look at use, they look at design. And so concerns about the use itself are not germane to the questions that the criteria are asking with respect to design review. Thank you for your time, and I turn it over to Dustin if he's like to offer any rebuttal to the testimony that was submitted.
There are a couple of points I would like to address, and again, I'll do it efficiently. I appreciate former Mayor Sam's comments regarding the process and where there was a perception of breakdown, which was after there was a selected design and then it was priced, and then the price came in at where it was. There was a public meeting where we discussed that price, and we discussed what other options could look like in terms of price and what you get for that. It was done very quickly after the initial pricing came out. But in essence, there was a conversation about it. I'm not sure where the comment about, there was no, appetite for criticism or for adjustments. I'm not quite sure where that came from. I would like to understand that better from Sam at another time. It means a lot to me that I understand where he's coming from in there. I felt like we had given quite a few opportunities for that feedback. And the second thing I'd like to point out, again, about process. So it was never our intent, and it's not feasible for us to go through and interview all 1,600 residents of Cannon Beach. So the goal is to survey and interview an accurate cross-section of that population. And that's what we had intended to do. And the way that we designed our community outreach events, we had 2 in-person on-site. One was during the middle of the day on a Saturday. The other was a little bit earlier in the day during the week. Our third community outreach event, I think it was actually the second one in sequence, was a town hall style meeting held at 6 p.m. Where you're sitting now, which, by the way, that one turned out to have the least amount of success in terms of turnout. But the goal there was different times of day, different days of the week, different formats, so that you would get as much participation as possible. And hopefully, by the end of that process, yes, only 100 or less than 10% of the population, but it's intended to be an accurate cross-section. What it does not reflect is if there is a strong sentiment out there and a large portion of people representing that sentiment don't participate in those community outreach events, the data is not going to capture that. Obviously, Tuesday night, we had a lot of people speaking about the cost of the project and how it's not palatable. The sentiment was not caught early on in the process. And so being able to make judgment calls throughout the design process back to what was surveyed, what was understood to be the public sentiment, I think absolutely it was flawed because we don't have all of that sentiment built into our discovery process.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Carrie. Clarification. I need it too. Okay, I'm going to now close the public hearing, and we're going to take a short break, 2 minutes, and then we'll move to consideration. Back in session, and we've closed the public hearing and we're moving to consideration. And Lisa has a question for Carrie to start us off.
Yeah, Carrie? Carrie? Oh,
Yes, I'm here.
okay. I have just a question that has me very confused. When we hear an appeal of something that the design review board decided, are we substituting our subjective judgment for their judgment? Or are we looking at whether or not they met the criteria they were supposed to make their decision, you know, by which they're supposed to make their decision? In other words, like as a matter of law, are we saying that they did it incorrectly, or are we actually substituting our personal taste for what they said when they commented on various architectural features, et cetera?
I don't think it's a question of taste. The role of the city council here is to interpret the criteria set forth in 1744.
Right.
And determining whether the evidence suggests that the standards are satisfied.
But
the council doesn't owe any deference to the DRB's determination necessarily, but if you want to give it deference, you can.
But like if there's a comment made like the roof is the wrong color, you know, that's a subjective opinion of the design review board. A lot of what they decide is based on what they think, you know, it's fairly subjective. It's not factual. You say the roof is the wrong color. Are we substituting in the appeal, does that even come into our consideration whether we agree with them or not?
I think that you are correct. The criteria are subjective, right? Welcoming design, whether the design is compatible, whether the landscaping can be maintained. Those are subjective determinations that the council has to interpret in the first instance and determine whether the evidence that you have before you indicates that those standards are satisfied.
Does that answer your question?
No, it doesn't. I'm still confused because if they say the roof is the wrong color and they give a reason for why they believe it is the wrong color, because it's a big flashy roof when you drive into town. But let's say I think that the roof isn't that, it isn't a big flashy roof, but that's totally subjective.
It is. It is totally subjective, and that's what the design review criteria are. They are highly subjective. And I can't that if you think that the applicant has done enough to mitigate the overall massing of the roof height and has taken steps given the fact that it is a pre-existing condition, then you would find the criteria are satisfied. If you don't think that the applicant has done enough, then you would find that those criteria are not satisfied.
Okay. Thanks.
That answered.
Yeah, that answered. That was a good answer. Let me understand it.
Okay. Who would like to start this discussion?
I'll say that there are things the design review board has said that I agree with. I feel there are other things that are subjective or could be defined differently. In some cases, I think there were some inappropriate things, or I think as Carrie mentioned, a failure to acknowledge that we're dealing with an existing structure. It's the community that directed us to save the two structures on the site. So I think we're working with those two structures. And I don't know if you want to go right into site plan.
Well, but what to follow up on what you said, as I've told a lot of people, when this first came up as even an idea, I was very ambivalent about the whole project. because I don't have a special that school building. I look at it objectively because I did not go to school here and I did not grow up in the town. So I look at the building objectively and I think, look, it's just not an attractive building on its face. And then when we had all those hearings with people, I wasn't on the council then, but I attended them and listened. And all these hearings about what people want, and people were so on board with keeping those structures that changed my mind. Because I thought, well, if that's what people want, the majority of people I heard from at those meetings all wanted to keep those structures. They wanted that Quonset hut thing to stay. They wanted the classrooms to stay. And so that's what ended up changing my mind so I'm hearing all these people saying, oh, the majority of people don't want it. Well, that, what I heard and in all the letters we got, a lot of those letters were in favor of this project. So that's what it's really, there's people against it and people in favor of it, both. But when we initially were doing it, that was what the majority of people seemed to want, was to keep those two structures and fix them up so that they could be functional. And I have a question for Bruce. Bruce? St. Dennis, are you there? Maybe someone else can answer it. I want to know, did we use TLT money to buy the property?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So if we were to build a community center just for the community on that property, would we have to pay that money back?
That would be a question for our attorney. But I believe that would happen.
Okay. So because we purchased it with TLT funds, the property itself and the existing structures, we're kind of in a bind to use it partially for tourist related activities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, I think we should start looking at the criteria. And whether we agree it's that or not. Personally, with the site plan, I thought we dealt with the site plan both as a planning commission and city council, and everything that is mentioned in the findings of fact from the design review board are things we considered. The vacation of the right of way, the parking variance, they're things that we sat here and debated. The planning commission recommended that we vacate the right of way, and we talked about it and we did. So I feel like the design review board is got like veto power over the decisions we've already made here. And I don't think that they have met criteria that we haven't considered on that.
And as far as the parking issue, my understanding, I don't know, maybe you can tell me because you're on the committee, chair of the committee. Isn't it true that the idea was that scheduling would be done so that you wouldn't have big tourist events there during the high tourist season?
Absolutely. I mean, we changed the whole concept. People say we haven't adjusted. We're not listening and we haven't adjusted when actually we've adjusted a lot. And for good reason. There was the concern about the big events, and we still talk about an event of 500 people and the parking, but the plan shifted to an interpretive center where a handful of people typically are going to be in there at a time, probably walking from wherever they're parked in town. And we've talked about not allowing events during peak seasons and peak times. Whenever it would compete with parking in town, that would not be allowed.
Okay.
And we're not talking about a capacity of 500, right? At all.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have a capacity of 5. Dustin, can you tell me what the capacity of that building would be?
And you're talking the gym,
Huh?
the gym.
Yeah, the gym. I mean, obviously, you're not getting 500 people in 3 classrooms.
No, and there's how we would calculate an occupant load for code purposes in order to meet egress requirements for a worst case scenario. And the figure we use for that is 15 square feet per occupants in a concentrated table and chair setting. So you've got a 7,000 square foot gym divided by 15. That worst case scenario, and again, that's 15 square feet over every square foot of that space, is about 467. But when we lay out the logistics of what it would take to fill that space with tables and chairs and people, a performer on a stage, everything you have going back of house, a high capacity, an actual high capacity for that space is closer to 200.
I think under the site plan criteria H, where appropriate, the design includes a parking and circulation system that encourages a pedestrian rather than vehicular orientation. I think that's something we took into consideration and reducing the parking, because we don't want people driving from downtown to the site. I don't know, do any of the rest of you see anything on the site design evaluation criteria, findings of fact that we did not consider and already agree on?
I don't see anything else.
Sure. Yeah, the thing that my biggest concern is the parking on that issue. But if that is really going to be built into the way that it is structured, so that doesn't become a conflict, then I can, whether, to say it's pedestrian oriented, I don't know what that means. It depends on the person. But, if they're not going to be big tourist events in there, or any kind of big meetings that require a lot of parking during the high season, then I see that conflict being significantly.
Yeah, and we haven't made those official recommendations to council, but that's exactly the conversation.
Okay. I'd expect nothing less.
It'll be coming soon. I would like to take the site plan off the table and make a motion to the site design and direct staff to prepare findings of support of approval.
There's a second.
Oh, yes, I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Can you, for everybody, define what you mean by site plan?
The site plan has to do with the parking and the setbacks and the location of the right of way that we've already dealt with.
Any other discussion?
How would you like to treat the landscaping?
Well, we have a motion or just for this.
Yeah, I figured we'd talk about the site design, the architectural design, and then the landscaping.
I'm sorry.
Try to take them one at a time.
Exactly clear to me. Thanks, Gary.
So everybody clear that we're just
Yes, I am now.
doing this site plan. Okay, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Counselor McCarthy?
And could you repeat the motion again?
Motion is only related to the site design. And that is the findings of fact about the setbacks, vacation of the right of way, and the reduced parking. Those are the things that were brought up in design review board.
Okay, and what is your motion?
The motion was to approve the site design and direct staff to prepare findings in support of approval.
Okay, so that would be. That that would be basically a denial of the design review board's findings.
Yeah, and accepting the appeal. Granting the appellant's appeal on that issue.
Does my motion work and is clear, Carrie?
It is. So you would be upholding the appeal and reversing the design review board's decision with respect to site orientation.
I agree, yes. We're voting, that's right. We're on a roll
Took a while.
call, right? Roll call, yeah.
Council President McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Counselor Kerr.
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay. The architecture.
Okay, architectural design. Oh, curious.
Can I keep talking? So I think there were several things in the architectural plan, mainly involving the roof. And I think Carrie made it clear that we're dealing with an existing structure and it's less than ideal in some situations, but the height, there's nothing we can do about it. And we're talking about saving these structures. You know, one of the questions is going to be the monotony. That's criteria D. And whether architectural details, such as design elements, texture, pattern, and color. And I think the design on the north and south end of the gymnasium are a huge step forward in visual interest.
Compared to what it is now.
Yeah. I mean, windows and awnings in those most visible areas. The roof is practical. The east side, I think it avoids monotony, breaking up the roof line. There's that northeast addition will stay. There's the proposed mural space and there's landscaping enhancements.
I think considering what you're starting with, a gigantic Quonset hut, you know, looks like an airplane hangar, and they've managed, the architectural team has managed to make that a lot more attractive. I mean, you know, architecturally pleasing. I mean, you're limited in what you can do with something like that. But that seemed to be one of the things that the community most wanted to preserve, was that big Quonset hut, or I don't know what you call it, hangar or whatever, but the gym. They wanted that, it's to stay. And so the modifications, I mean, I don't think it can get worse. So I think that the modifications, and I think they've done everything they can to try and, you know, take, if you're working with that to begin with, then everything that they've done, and I can't see, you know, I'd love it if the roof could be, you know, a pattern with tiles or something, but that's so incredibly expensive. I know we can't do that. So, you know, and it wouldn't be practical in this climate to have a, you know, a roof like that. So I think given what the raw materials are, what we're starting with, I don't see that they've, I think they've improved on the monotony of the building.
Yeah, that's D. E, if the project includes a large structure or structures such as a large motel or condominium, design avoids a monolithic expanse of frontages and roof lines and diminishes the massing of the buildings by breaking up building sections, use of such elements as variable planes, projections, bays, dormers, setbacks, or changes in the roof line. And the findings of fact from the design review board are modified version of the existing half-round gymnasium fails this. But again, that's what we're working with, so. And I think we've heard from architects and the builder that adding dormers to that slope side of the roof would be cost prohibitive. And there's obviously a lot of concern about costs, and it just seems like that would be an inappropriate choice to force that.
Well, I think also putting a dormer on a roof like that would architecturally look bizarre. You know, it wouldn't look good. Have a dormer on a Quonset hut style roof. Doesn't make much sense to me architecturally.
Dustin, I do have a question about a comment that was made by a member of the Design Review Board regarding the arches in the Quonset hut rotting, and talking about how it had to be rebuilt because of rotting arches. Could you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, my recollection, the comment was made in reference to a comment that I had made, that how the Quonset hut structure meets grade, there's an inherent moisture penetration problem at that wall or roof base. However, because, you know, in its current condition, it's not heated, there's not a lot of covering up of the existing conditions. It has not resulted in any verifiable rot found by our team or the previous architects and engineers that looked at the building from a seismic standpoint, who also did a thorough building evaluation.
So there's not a lot, there's not any, it's conducive to rot, but it hasn't rotted yet. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Now, there was previously a wood floor in that space that was rotting, and that has been removed.
Okay. And what kind of construction needs to be done on the Quonset hut to keep it standing? Because you did, I think you mentioned in the hearing that it's really, it wasn't meant to be standing in the first place this long, and therefore it needs to be reinforced.
Yeah, and you know, I apologize. I think maybe there was a little bit of creativity in interpreting what I had said at one of the DRB meetings. What I had intended to say, I think my specific words were that it was not a structure designed for permanence. It is a hangar building. So Councilor Kerr was correct. It looks like a hangar. It was designed to be a hangar. It was designed in the 40s by the Air Force, and it was meant to last the duration of war. That said, it is built with very high quality wood, much tighter grain than you would find today. It's been well cared for in the past. There's no structural deficiencies that I'm aware of that have resulted from it standing in place for as long as it has. The structural deficiencies that the building has are because it wasn't designed to meet current code. So when we talk about going in and doing seismic retrofit, that's what it's for. It's to meet current code. But the structure itself is sound.
And also, we received a letter asking about the construction between the Quonset hut and the classrooms, which I believe is probably the lobby, and the different roof levels there and the height of the roof level that kind of over the overhang. Can you talk a little bit about what the purpose of that is?
Of the structure in between the two existing structures or the roof over? Okay. Yeah. Sure. I want to point out, to finish answering the previous question too, I realized as you were speaking that I didn't finish talking about what it's going to take to keep the structure standing. Part of the reason why we have a concrete base wrapping around the building is to mitigate the fact that, one, there's no there's not like a gutter and downspout condition where we're collecting water at the roof level and then draining out to a point of conveyance. It just flows off the side of the building and meets grade, and that's it. Well, currently the wooden structure goes down to fractions of an inch above grade. So you have a real problem with moisture coming into the building at that point where the roof, or you can consider it a wall system, where it meets grade. So the concrete wainscot, we call it, that goes around the building is intended to mitigate that. And that will help with the life of the building, getting many more decades out of it. The intended purpose of the structure in between the two buildings, I do want to point out that until 2021, there was a structure that connected the two buildings. That was the main entry to the school. It was removed in, I believe it was 2021. It might have been 2020, but in order to do the seismic upgrades being performed by another architect and engineering construction team for the school building and also for the gym building. So it was removed at that time. What we've done is we've replaced that structure with what we call the Heritage Lobby. And the Heritage Lobby, and I apologize if this sounds really redundant, it's part of the interpretive experience of this project. It's the heart, if you will, of this project. So people congregate in the Southeast Plaza. If people are walking from downtown or walking from their homes, this is where they end up. They could continue walking. Some people will congregate. We offer interpretive experiences right there in that space. And then along the way to the Heritage Lobby and then within the Heritage Lobby. So the promise was always, we want people, when they visit this site, to understand this special place, to understand the significance of the soil that they're standing on. And that education starts in the Southeast Plaza and culminates in what we call the Heritage Lobby. So the Heritage Lobby has that function of education and interpretation, but additionally, by connecting the two structures like that, at one point, the city was looking, and I believe they still are, at potential ways that they could lease out that space, any component of the existing architecture on site. And it made a lot more sense to have a piece that connected to the two existing structures, especially in consideration that there was a need to have a kitchen in the gym building. So once you have a kitchen in the gym building, you don't want people to be served their food by that food first starting in the kitchen, then going outside and then bringing it back into the kitchen. And then it offers a multitude of other leasing opportunities, ways in which the building can be sort of chopped up and segregated for terms of leasing on a daily or nightly basis.
Why do you have, why is the roof line the way it is over that lobby? It looks like you have a double structure there. It looks like you're adding windows maybe to add light to the lobby. Is that what that's for?
Yeah, that there are so many reasons. So the reason why the height, the high roof of that sort of Heritage Lobby, that internal piece, is in between the two. It makes the construction detailing and weatherability of that structure so much easier to accomplish in the field, to have a end wall termination as opposed to trying to marry up to the existing roof. It also offers the opportunity for clerestory windows and to bring daylight further into that space. As far as the front of the building, the front of the Heritage Lobby also having that sort of two-tiered roof, kind of a high canopy and a low canopy. I'd like to remind everyone here at this hearing that we were in deep collaboration with the tribe throughout all phases of design. And one thing that was important was that it didn't feel like at first we just had the low canopy and you're walking in sort of underwhelmingly into a space and then presented with, you know, a really nice high volume. And it was preferred by the tribe and by my own, you know, architectural aesthetic values that, you know, it should be a little bit more engaging with people, especially since, well, I also want to point out that, you know, before the right-of-way acquisition, the gym building, as tall as it is, was only 5 feet off the property line. So we need wayfinding measures to get people, pedestrians, from the southeast entry plaza to the main entrance of the building. So we needed to really enunciate that this is the main entrance to the building.
I think these are good conversations to have, but I think they're probably more for the next.
Well, the
step
design of
in
the
this.
roof, I think, is definitely part of the
That's relevant to.
discussion here.
I mean, the design review, great findings of fact are all about the Quonset hut roof. So, I mean, as Carrie stated, you know, we're here to decide whether the criteria fits or not. Moving forward, maybe there will be some changes and we can assess those things, but I mean, right now, I mean, these criteria are all talking about the half round gym building roof.
No, I don't know. I think E is talking about various roof lines. They have, it's
Yeah.
plural.
And the height of the,
So I think that's.
But I'm saying the findings of fact from the design review board are only pointing to the half round of the roof.
Yeah, I know, but when you listen to the tape and everything, there's a lot more discussion than just this. I think,
I mean, this is.
I'd rather
this is
cover it and be,
the record in front of us.
well, I'd rather just cover it all. I don't want to skimp on the discussion.
And the recordings of the meeting are part of.
Yes.
yeah, a part of the record.
Right. Yep.
So criteria F, if the project is unusually large or it is likely to become a village landmark, or if it's located so as to become part of introduction transition to the city, as Sam pointed out, it is. Or particular district or to the beach, the design acknowledges the special impact the project would have on the entire community by addressing the design criteria in an exemplary, standard setting fashion. So I guess that's what we're here to address is the findings again say that the roof fails that criteria. I'm not sure I necessarily agree. But I think the other improvements visible as you enter the city, notably the north end of the gymnasium, it's a huge improvement. So do we want to call it exemplary and standard setting fashion?
Given the fact that we have to maintain that structure, the hangar. That's either that or rip it down, you know, I mean, yeah. I think what's been done with it, you know, is they've done a good job at trying to maintain the hangar, but still make it look more palatable. Certainly is a lot better looking than what's there now.
Agreed.
True, I think, you know, a lot of function is built into the added portions to the gym.
That's true.
You know, you need some amount of covered space in order to make the building working. Like they indicated earlier, there was a breezeway. There currently is one that's going to be modified on the north side of the classroom. It makes the building work better.
Right.
And that's where I don't understand, you know, the discussion and the findings of fact don't seem to
I'm not understanding why the highly modified, version of the gym is not meeting the criteria.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. No, I agree with you.
Okay.
And G is about the height of the structure and whether it's architecturally compatible with the site and the surrounding neighborhood. The height of the structure contributes to the village scale. Here again, we're dealing with an existing structure.
It wasn't then, it isn't now,
Yeah.
and it won't be.
Again, the findings of fact are that it fails that criteria.
You're gonna keep the gym. It's the way it comes. With that height built into it.
And we want to keep the gym.
And H is kind of the same issue. The height of the structures is such that it does not unreasonably destroy or degrade the scenic views of the surrounding area. It is what it is now, and I only see it improving the views and the value of the surrounding area with the improvements that are proposed.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean,
Maybe
you're gonna keep that,
fails
keep that gym.
criteria.
Yeah.
If none of you find a way that this fails the criteria, I would move to approve the architectural design and direct staff to prepare findings in support of approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Council President McCartney,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, now we have landscaping.
Landscaping. I agree with some of the design review board's comments. And I think we can get closer to the intent of the criteria. That's with a conditional approval, the landscape design. I'd like to see this land.
Which difference would you suggest?
I think I really hear a consensus that the garden is still too complex. My biggest concern with it is that it, as the design review board mentioned, it is not, what's the language they used? A coherent single nature trail, which is some of the concept that we've been working on. You could start at the Southeast Plaza, walk through the native garden and continue along the looping around the site. And right now it kind of gets lost into that complex garden. And there's not really a clear path that is what I feel like the intention is.
What about those two purple arrows we saw just presented to us tonight where it showed the ways to get into the site?
They were more accessing the site and less about a clear interpretive trail that you'd follow all the way around the site.
Well, I think
So I was kind of
there was
confused
one
about
on
that too.
On that east side, I mean, it goes around on the east side and around the interpretive trail, and there's the other one on the west side that goes.
I mean,
into the
yeah,
side.
we should look at it because it, clearly the complex garden does connect
Carrie?
if you
Just
follow
wanted to
through. But
suggest that maybe Dustin could bring up the
Oh, yeah,
plan so you
yeah.
all could talk to the plan. So
Yeah.
that because I'm taking notes so that I can write findings and I would help me understand what you're talking about. So please pardon the interruption.
No, thank you. I think
And
we're
Dustin,
all-
I recommend using that one because it illustrates what they're talking about.
So neither. I mean, if the purple lines show different accesses to the park, but there's not a single cohesive trail that goes through the native plant garden and then continues around the site to the purple trail along the creek side.
Is it meant to? I mean, is it meant to go through the garden?
Is it possible? I guess I'm not even seeing what you're talking about. Can you point on it on the map? Just what you're talking about?
We've been talking about a single trail that gives you an interpretive experience around the entire site.
Who's been talking about it?
As part of the recommendations to council from the Committee on Use and Management.
But this is design, not use.
Yes.
This isn't a use and management issue. It's a design issue.
Yes.
So you're talking about
Does not match the use that. So
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not familiar with it.
you would be able to get from here to here through the native plant garden. And right now you kind of get lost in a maze and maybe you can find your way down there, but it is not a coherent single trail.
Justin, or somebody on the line to the east, the straight line that goes up to the east, is that the sidewalk or is that a trail
That is paved.
that is paved?
Yeah.
So it's paved adjacent to a sidewalk or, I mean, that's part of the site, right? It's not part of the,
Oh, I'm sorry, over here on the east, correct? That's
yeah,
That's the sidewalk.
that's the existing sidewalk along.
that's
First
existing
Street.
system. Okay, so it's not a real trail then.
No, the trail is further to the north up here.
Okay, all right.
You know, I also read something that Doug Dewar wrote for National Park Service and PSU archaeological program when they were looking at interpretation of the site. And his recommendation was a native plant garden that will provide visitors with an opportunity to envision the natural landscape as seen by the original inhabitants of the village. And it feels like what we've got is a formal garden that people can get lost in. It doesn't feel like it's that kind of natural landscape that lets people envision the site as it was.
Well, I certainly think there's a way to keep the Thunderbird motif or the idea of it without the complexity of the pathways.
I think so too.
How does everyone feel about elk fences?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think they're gonna work.
Yeah, I'm thumbs down on any fences,
Yeah.
temporary or
I mean,
other.
they're just not gonna work with our elk. You know? I think that's a pipe dream. 7-foot fence around the garden,
And just the idea of a fence around a garden when you're even coming across the bridge to view the whole project and you see this fence there, then that kind of blocks whatever view or feeling or emotion or anything that evokes from
Right.
seeing that is, you're seeing a fence.
A simpler
It's
garden.
not gonna work.
And it probably won't work.
It's gonna go right.
I think that the native plants will help. I think that will, especially if there's other grasses to appeal to the elk, but we just have to face it, that whatever kind of garden is going to be put in there, we're going to have elk in it eventually, or at some point or another, because they just, it's just the way it is.
That's
And
why I like
they were hundreds of years ago in there too.
in a natural landscape. Yes.
So
So I mean, if
I'm not talking about I don't know what kind of a trail you're talking about, but I'm just talking about just the general idea of the garden is so appealing, but I just can't see how it's going to work.
I think it needs to continue to be simplified. But I mean, I've always envisioned it as there's the Southeast Plaza and there's a story about the origin story and Thunderbird's eggs that were thrown from Saddle Mountain and landed there. And that was the beginning of the village. And then you keep walking and you walk through native plants with interpretive information. And then you keep going and hit the trail and you get information about the watershed, and you go a little farther on the trail and you get information about Lewis and Clark's visit and looking across the creek to where they camped. And it's just one continuous trail, I think, is the concept that gives us a 7-day-a-week interpretive experience for people.
I think that the Thunderbird could be incorporated into the plaza in the back,
I've thought the same thing.
I think that, because that would be a design within the plaza.
It's just that, yeah, we have elk and we also have geese and we have, it's going to be tough to maintain a garden like that, even though I love gardens like that, but.
I mean, if I were to recommend a conditional approval, it would be a simplified garden, native plant garden, an obvious trail that connects from the plaza to the loop along the creek. And I certainly would like to see it be a little more natural rather than a formal garden as described, but I think we could grow into something a little more formal.
And as far as the welcome woman, we can't, they have to. I understand what they said when they said it's premature at this point because they don't have a design for the welcome woman. It's the idea of having a welcome woman. But until it's approved, they can't get an artist to design it.
I also don't think it was totally appropriate in the findings to contradict what the tribe says regarding their own culture and calling some things inappropriate.
Like what? I mean, the Thunderbird on the ground?
Welcoming woman as a totem, the Thunderbird on the ground. It's like, we've talked to the tribe and they support this. And they've
I know.
They said it's not any kind of problem.
Well, I was interested. I did a bunch of research about the Thunderbird on the ground and I couldn't find anything. And I'd love to know where that came from because I couldn't find anything that said that it was, sort of inappropriate to place it on the ground. Doesn't mean it's not there. I just couldn't find it.
Well, we've consulted extensively with the tribe and asked them the question. So
Well, one thing, especially with the statue, is I just ask that the lighting be something that
Oh, yes.
meets our current code.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think design review got some things right here. And I would just like to get to some kind of conditional approval that acknowledges some of those things. And perhaps we've done it before, a revised plan that gets presented back to council for our approval.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to acknowledge that some of this is a work in progress. And that a project with a scope as large as this is, there's some things that just may need continued work.
I guess I'd like to know, though, this is about a lot of the comments we heard over the course. I mean, I wrote down every single comment, every person who made a comment and what the gist of their comment was. I have a notebook here full of that. And so, but a lot of it has to do with just having the project at all. You know, I mean, the concept of the project, that's not what this appeal is about.
Right.
That's the problem. This appeal is about whether, and the design review board was lauded for, you know, standing up to the project, but that's not what this is. It's whether or not they met the criteria. And I think we need to have a discussion about all the information we heard
We will.
from, okay.
Well, it's January 9th, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a separate discussion.
Right.
All of the people we heard from, I have a total of 35 people from the other night commented. And so I'd like to, plus all those letters.
Right.
And so it'd be nice, yeah, as long as I know we're going to address that, which is a different issue than this.
Again, Carrie said it earlier, we're making some findings on
Just on these very
That doesn't mean
narrow,
doesn't mean that the plan as proposed is what we're
A
going
done
to do.
deal.
We're going
Yeah.
to listen again on January 9th and have the discussion and discuss whether there's potential reduction in scope or changes in the landscaping and roof lines and maybe more. I don't know.
right. But this, I guess I just wanted everybody who's listening and in the audience to know that we're not discussing all those comments had to do with not these criteria, or most of them, but had to do with the issue of the project to be period. And that's January 9th. Okay.
Carrie, can you weigh in on the idea of a conditional approval on the landscape plan?
Sure, I have, I think there are a couple of options. I think that the, idea would be a tentative approval tonight with the staff coming back with findings that are consistent with your deliberation with respect to all three areas. With respect to the landscaping specifically, what I heard was a condition to require a simplified garden, a more obvious trail loop to the creek, and a more natural, less formal garden. So we could write up a condition that talks about that. That would be one option. A second option would be to have the applicant come back with a revised design. The problem with that is I don't know if that could be done within the timeline, and the record's closed. And so I think that going with a condition, at least at this phase, when you think there may be more conversations to be had, I think would allow you that kind of flexibility. So I guess what I like is the condition that really gets at what goal you're trying to achieve, and then requires the applicant to achieve it. There's, you know, so there's the condition revising the design now. There is the option of having the applicant come back, would be a second option with respect to a condition. The third option might be to have the applicant come back a lot later when you've done more of the proprietary design. I think maybe you might want to ask the applicant's team what works, whether they think they could get at the council's concern for greater simplicity in a fairly de minimis way, in a way that gets to what you're needing, or if they think this is a complete redesign.
Dustin?
Yeah, so you know what I'm hearing, the concerns being, I think it's probably closer to a full redesign than just making a few minor tweaks. And unfortunately, timing is a bit of a problem right now during the holidays. I know Joyce Jackson is tonight flying out cross country to meet her grandchild and is going to spend, you know, a few weeks out there. So we won't be able to get anything turned around immediately.
I think that's very understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that a concern?
It's not to me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is of the entire project. This will occur, you know, at the end.
Yeah, it doesn't
I mean, I
seem-
know we need to make allowances on the site for where it will be. But I still think there's more than enough time to get at what the concerns that we've been addressing tonight.
What I might say.
I think Gary's comment, the first item is a good condition that would, it's not saying bring it back in X time. It's saying bring it back beforehand. And I think it's a very good way of handling it and getting it back to you guys before it's officially considered approved. So I think it's a good way of handling it.
And I think what Carrie said satisfied everything, her first iteration of what the conditions would be. I guess then again, what is the process for getting it approved would be the other part of that.
Is there any time limit that we have?
Well, we're the applicant.
Okay.
You know, so from that perspective, but, you know, I'm assuming Dustin would get to it, but there's nothing that says it has to be coming back by X amount of time. It's a matter of getting it back to you. Carrie, I don't know if you had any sort of comments with regards to the timing aspect.
Well, I think that if you approve it with conditions, then the applicant can come back with those revisions to you at the time that works for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think it would just be a matter of deciding as part of the condition what that process would be. I'm assuming it would be a limited review of just the landscape criteria of 1744. We could have notice consistent with the type 3 notice decision if that's something that the council would want to do. But you would essentially find that the criteria are satisfied and that the conditions will ensure that, and the condition would require a review before city council of that revised landscape design.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And we would work up the language of that condition and bring it back to you on the 6th. I can't remember. Excuse me, Steve, is that right? 6th is the day of the continued hearing?
12. I think it's the
12.
3rd.
Sorry, Jen.
12, yeah.
Okay, so then if you had any additional wordsmithing to that condition on the 12th, we would do that then.
So we need language for that conditional approval now to wrap this.
Yeah,
No,
so-
you could have a tentative approval tonight with an ask that staff put together the language of the condition for your final sign off on the 9th, 12th. Excuse me, 12th.
Next week. Okay.
So a move to tentatively approve the landscape design and direct staff to prepare findings in support of approval with the conditions discussed tonight.
Absolutely. Good. Thank you.
Should I repeat that?
Yeah.
Did that sound like a motion?
It did to me,
Okay.
and I'm willing to second it. Nancy, I saw you.
No, go ahead. Second it.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussions? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thanks. That
Just to reiterate, meeting on the 9th,
January 9th.
January 9th is a meeting where we will address all the testimony that we heard these last few meetings,
Yes.
including public process. Okay.
And yeah, there's still a lot of misunderstanding about this
Yeah.
project and the funding and the use of the facility. And hopefully those will all be an opportunity to get that hopefully cleared up.
Well, I hope people come and make, and, you know, they can either speak again or we have their, what's been said, at least I do.
Yep.
You know, so, yeah, because I think it's really important that those things get addressed.
Yes. Okay, ready to go on? Anything on the monthly status report? I like the new reporting on it, the changes that were made. Anything else on monthly status? Okay, mayor communications. I don't have anything specific. Counselor communications.
Just about this.
It'll be the 14th is retreat date.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
What time is, next time's that start? 11?
11? Goes from 11 to whatever, 4 or 5?
This one has to be done at 4 because the president has the meeting. And then we'll send out, we'll have the agenda the week before and, which is this week.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
And we'll get that posted and then also, we'll discuss lunch.
And then we have code audit on the 13th.
So we have code on the 13th. So just the DRB is actually meeting on the 11th. It's a special date because of the holidays. The 12th will be council, the 13th will be code audit, and the 14th at the 11th.
And we did, should mention, we had a meeting, an audit, well, committee engagement, community engagement committee meeting yesterday to discuss community engagement with the audit
books.
Yeah.
With
Okay.
the works people about the code audit.
Okay.
And
anything to.
Well, we were told at the meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, that the reorganization should be done by that meeting. Or
Yeah, by the next,
should
our
say
next
something.
audit meeting. Yeah.
You know. And that the wetlands ordinance is moving through the state system. They're taking all of the information they were given and tweaking it so that from everybody, from staff, from and from the meeting we had and the public meeting, everything, and trying to come up with the final the state they have to go through an analysis for the state called an EC, which means economic, social. I can't remember what the last E is, but and they just call it an EC for short. And then that has to be done. Herbworks is doing that part of it for the city. Is doing that. And so they have to do it with the Department of State Lands and Conservation. So we're waiting on that. And they said by the end of December, they should have that into the state, which would mean that we'd start having our public hearings.
Good.
Am I right? Is that my?
Yes, and the hope would be at a minimum to at least have it in DLCD's hands at Plan Commission with it being formally commented on before it ever got to council. So we know whether or not there were any concerns that they had before it's brought to council for consideration.
Right.
And I think our first community engagement meeting on housing will be probably sometime in February or March.
Oh, and we did discuss about having that meeting in possibly a larger venue because housing is a huge hot button issue with the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'd be, on workforce and middle housing mostly. And we would have some kind of possible presentation by people, just like we did with the Dogami thing when they brought in the scientists to talk to us about the best way to shore up a shoreline, you know, and so we have some more knowledge, factual knowledge. So they would do the same thing in this, talk about statistics, where needs are, where they've determined, you know, as long as it was factual, not just subjective. So, and that would be open to the public and in a bigger venue eventually. So
As long as it has Zoom and capability as well.
yeah, so that we wouldn't end up with the problem of not having enough room for people.
Good.
So.
Anything else? Anything for good of the order?
I know it's late, but I would like to say a couple things.
Okay.
I mean, we've heard a lot from people who say that we're not listening or people aren't being heard. And, you know, I know who's sitting up here and I just don't believe that that is accurate. I feel like we're listening to everybody's opinion and everybody's thought and not just the loudest and angriest people. We're listening, we're looking at all the written submissions. We listen to all the public comments at every meeting. We talk to people on the sidewalk and we get more information. And we're considering the options of all of those people who did participate in this public process that's essentially been going on for 3 years. And it's led us to this point where we're at, where we've got funding approved for this project and a design, and we're potentially a few months away from groundbreaking. So I think they're the loudest and angriest people out there saying we don't listen are basically saying, do what I want and ignore the others. And I think with any big project like this, whatever we decide is going to make some people upset and angry. So I hope people can understand what we're trying to deal with as far as balance here, and hopefully continue to conduct them. Maybe continue is not the right word, but to conduct themselves in a civil manner when we hear from people.
I think everyone's been civil. I do. I don't think we've had people being uncivil. I think everyone's, you know, they might feel strongly about something and be very, you know, expressive about the way they say things, but in general.
I guess when I hear things like many refer to the project as the casino building, I find that offensive and uncivil.
I don't. That's just their opinion.
Okay.
They're entitled to their opinion. It doesn't bother me if, you know, that's how they see it. I just am bothered by the fact that, and this has always bothered me, is that when people get up and speak at the beginning of the meeting or for a specific issue, we have to sit here like stony statues. We can't interact. So people think that we don't, you know, we got accused, I think, by someone of staring at computer screens. I don't even have a computer here, but anyway, you know, staring at the screens and not paying attention, which is actually so inaccurate. I mean, that's so unfair to make that accusation. I mean, I think everyone here is really listening, as you know.
What we're doing is taking notes on what people are saying.
Right. So
Refer back to the note.
I can't remember, you know, 36 people's testimony. I have to write it down.
Yeah.
You know, so I just, you know, I think so I'm glad that we're having this hearing on the 9th of January, because that's where we get a chance to address people's concerns directly.
And it
It's
seems
very important that, and then I'll tell you, I'll be so disappointed if those same people who say we're not listening to them don't come pay attention to the meeting or come, because then here we are, this is the chance, you know, to respond. And I don't know.
Seems that by many of the comments we're hearing, there's a lot of people who still don't understand. They don't understand the funding for the project. They don't understand how the funding can be used or how it cannot be used. And they don't understand the actual plans for the facility. So I think January 9th is important.
Yeah.
To continue listening, to continue adjusting course, and to clear up some of that for people, I hope.
Right, if we could use that money to build workforce housing, we'd probably all do it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there was, I don't know how many comments talked about housing. And
Right.
it's like, it's just, housing is important and we're working on it and.
It has nothing to do with the money for this project.
Exactly.
You can't use TLT money for housing.
Anyway, thank you for letting me go on for a minute.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? From the order. Okay, thank you, and meeting's adjourned.